Welcome to the DFIRmas podcast. This is a seasonal short series podcast by ArcPoint Forensics hosted by Amy Moles. In this episode, I'm joined by Debbie Garner to discuss a recent project she started to help guide individuals in the digital forensic community on where to find valuable resources for continuous education. Debbie Garner retired from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation as a special agent in charge of GBI's Child Exploitation and Computer Crimes Unit and was the Internet Crimes Against Children ICAC Task Force Commander for the state of Georgia for the last 8 years of her career. In that capacity, she oversaw the state's effort to detect and investigate child sexual exploitation cases as well as the digital forensic lab for the state. Her leadership of the Georgia Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force resulted in the arrest of over 2,500 offenders. Debbie Garner's career with the GBI spanned over 30 years. Prior to her time as the ICAC commander for the state of Georgia, she had a variety of other assignments in fields such as narcotics, healthcare fraud, fusion center management, terrorism intelligence, officer-involved use of force, and general investigations. Currently, Debbie is a technology advocate working in the private sector and nonprofit arena, mobilizing a movement and educating law enforcement officers and executives about tech-enabled innovations and solutions for modernizing their agencies. Most recently, she worked with companies such as Hexordia, Cellbrite, Grayshift, and NetSpark. She utilizes her extensive network, experience, and knowledge to align the voices of law enforcement, technology providers, internet platforms, lawmakers, and the public, developing forward-looking strategies and driving awareness of how technology can keep our communities safer.
All right, so jumping right into it. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and experience in ICAC as well as digital forensics?
Sure. So, I spent 30 years with the GBI and I had a variety of assignments. So I worked narcotics, I worked healthcare fraud. I helped manage the fusion, the terrorism intelligence portion of our state fusion center. I helped manage our Atlanta field office, which worked general investigations like rape, robbery, homicide, political corruption, officer-involved use of force. But the last 8 years of my career was as the special agent in charge of GBI's Child Exploitation and Computer Crimes Unit. And whoever holds that position in that work unit is also the ICAC commander for the state of Georgia. So the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force Commander. As I grew in that role, it became clear to me that it was the first time in my career that I felt that I was truly making a difference daily. I had done all of these amazing things, working with amazing people and working on really interesting cases prior to that. But it was really the first time in my career that I felt I was truly making a difference daily. We were helping safeguard children. We were finding and arresting those that were harming them. And the people that I was working with nationally and globally, and the people I was supervising were so intelligent and so passionate that I fell in love with the ICAC community as well. So when I retired, I specifically chose organizations where I could continue to work with this community on the ICAC mission and in the anti-child exploitation space in a different way. So technology companies, wellness resources, organizations providing training, and then Raven, who lobbies Congress for additional funding for the ICAC task forces. So I guess the short answer to the question would be I'm drawn to this field because of the mission and the people.
So it's a really hard field to be in. Like ICAC and CSAM investigations are extremely taxing. So how do you keep the inspiration going, essentially? Like, how do you keep going in that environment?
It is hard, and I think everybody sort of relies on each other. One of the things I'm most proud of is developing the culture in the work unit and the task force that I was, a part of, where it was okay to talk about those things. In law enforcement, we all, there's this stigma, we have to be super strong, and we do, but it's also okay to talk about those things. Relying on each other and being able to be honest about the content that we're viewing and the overwhelming caseload and not having enough resources, and all of those things are real challenges, and we basically had to rely on each other.
Yeah, and it's awesome that you have that community in that environment, because I think, as I personally did not work ICAC or CSAM investigations, but I worked in Department of Defense. And a lot of those cases are hard. That content, that material that you're seeing day in and day out is very difficult and taxing as well. And you just see a different side of humanity that's hard for, individuals like you and I who are not involved in those activities.
Right.
Personally, it's hard to comprehend like that thought process. So community is super, super important. So you kind of touched on references a little bit. What are some type of references or training that someone can expect if they want to go down a digital forensics path?
So I guess I'll start by saying, when you're working ICAC cases, there are investigators, examiners, analysts, and they each sort of have a different role, but sometimes one person plays all of that.
Yes.
So, as far as some of the training that they can take, I think that they have to have an understanding, a general understanding of child exploitation investigations. So, the general pathway or the general structure of an investigation. So from receipt to review of the data to requesting additional data to seizing devices, they have to have a general understanding of that. So, getting that sort of training and resources that are available to do all those things. But then as we move into things like digital forensics training specifically, or OSINT training, or things like that, there's a wide variety of paths you can go. And there's a lot of training out there, and it is critical. It's vital for all, for training is incredibly vital. So like for child exploitation and child sexual abuse material investigations, they're digital crimes. There will always be a digital component to them. And law enforcement can't work these cases effectively if someone on their team is not trained to extract, find, process, analyze, review the data on digital devices. Without the collection and review of the evidence, we don't have cases. So well-trained examiners and investigators are vital to this process.
Yeah, so I actually just spoke with John Pizzuro for this podcast, and he was talking about the limitations of funding and how he works for Raven and is trying to lobby to get additional funding to these ICAC units.
Right.
The resources, so a lot of the stuff that he's focused on is the technology piece, like technology and software, so that these examiners can get the tools that they need to do their job. But nobody really touches on training. So with all the different resources, like we know all of the big training platforms and stuff that are out there, but if you have a limited budget, where do you even start? Like, what training do you target first? Why is it even important to go after training if you have certified examiners?
I mean, let's face it, training can be expensive. It can be expensive, but the alternative, or one of the alternatives, is free or low cost training, coupled with some of the cost-effective advanced training. There's also a lot of vendor-sponsored webinars, and there are things that you can learn on their own. Maybe it takes a little bit longer, maybe it's not as streamlined, but there are ways that you can obtain training that is free or low cost. So, even for me, I started a project where I'm taking free digital forensics and OSINT training to show, one, that if I can do it, anybody can, and to show how far one can simply get taking some of the free offerings that are available. And I'm going to write about that, write some articles about that, like my experience doing just that. There are, like I said, there's a ton of free resources available for digital forensics and OSINT training. Some of the other things are, I'm a part of Raven as well, and we are trying to obtain funding for technology, and some of that includes training.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Some of that can include, well, if the technology is something that they need to be trained on, it can include that as well.
So are you working with the vendors, like when they get training and stuff like that or like a technology package, to maybe work with those vendors to include like some type of training package that goes along with it?
So we won't be the negotiators with the training vendors, but
okay.
We do have, all of us who are a part of Raven honestly do have relationships with lots of different tool developers and some of the training vendors, and we certainly can have those discussions. But we won't be doing that necessarily on behalf of agencies. That's a relationship that's probably between the tool vendors and the agencies themselves. We can certainly help them start those discussions, though.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite resource that you like right now that are you taking the classes?
So
let me ask it differently.
Okay. So I started, the reason I started this project, it was really for me, but I honestly was hoping that it might help others watch me go through this. So, I'll back up just a little bit. I always joked, but I was 100% serious that I supervised people that were way smarter than I was. I was not trained in digital forensics. I supervised examiners. I was an agent. I grew up in the ranks of being a sworn law enforcement officer. In the work unit that I supervised, sworn agents, we did the interviews, and we wrote the search warrants, and we seized the devices, and then the examiners took them and did what they did. They worked their magic. I was always so impressed and slightly jealous of their ability to do those things. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to try it. Now that I have a little bit of time to devote to that, I'm going to at least try to take free resources. And there's a lot of them out there. I'm going to try to take free training classes. And there's a lot of them out there. Like I started with Hexordia's seizure class, like how to seize digital devices, how to seize digital evidence. I started that, and I've already written, a blog or an article on that. So I'm going to continue with that. I think Hexordia has 3 more free classes, and then I'll move on to some of the other free training that's available and sort of see how far I can get.
Okay. So when you're taking the free resources and stuff like that, are you leveling up to other ones that are paid for, or are you just, this project is just focused on the free resources right now?
Right now, just free resources, but I do hope that the project will evolve into me being able to take more advanced classes. I don't know that I will ever be a digital forensic examiner in a law enforcement agency or a private corporation. That's really not my goal. I really want to understand the resources that are out there. I want to be able to, I feel like I can communicate with examiners and tool developers and training providers now, but it's really from an executive leadership position, knowing about what they're doing, but I can't do those things myself. So it's really an effort to, as a supervisor, I was formerly a supervisor. I felt like I understood what the people I was supervising were doing, but I really want a deeper understanding.
I think that's smart too, because then you can have a deeper level conversation and connection with your examiners, right? When you also know their struggles and what they need to do to get the data and to investigate it. I think that there's a huge gap with leaders on that, where especially when you're talking to, as coming from just a vendor's perspective, right? We have a product that we're selling into these customer sets, and a lot of times we'll talk to the decision maker who is a leadership individual, and they don't actually do the casework. So their justification is like, well, I think I already have tools that do this. And then you talk to the end user and they're like, no, I want this tool because it does X, Y, and Z, and these other ones don't. So that specialty and bridging that gap, I think, is really, really important. And also just being like a forever learner, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
That's one of the things that I feel like I can help people with, both agencies and vendors, is bridging that gap between, so speaking to law enforcement executives as a former law enforcement executive, trying to explain to them the importance of digital forensics, first of all, specific tools or what tools are available, and then the training that's involved, helping them understand that technology is the future of policing, and digital forensics is not going away. Digital devices are involved in virtually every crime that's committed now. We can pull evidence from digital devices in almost every crime. So it is vitally important, and some of them, they're slowly coming around, but those are the conversations, though, that still need to be had in some agencies.
So when you're explaining impact for training opportunities to some of these agencies, where do you start? Because a lot of them have to prioritize their funding, and they have to make really tough decisions, right? Like, I know when we were speaking to another customer set, they're like, listen, like, we need vehicles so that we can get to like a search warrant. Like, I'm like, I can't really argue with that. Like, I don't know what your priorities are, but how do you break that up for them so that they can understand the impact?
So I'll completely agree with what you said. I actually wrote an article on how do law enforcement leaders prioritize the limited amount of funding that they get, because it's a genuine issue, right? Like I'm promoting digital forensics tools, training, technology, just examiners also. So, how do you make that a priority when, like you said, maybe they are prioritizing license plate readers or body cameras, or they have to purchase duty weapons, or like legitimately they are trying to prioritize a limited budget. And sometimes digital forensics, it's something they don't understand. And, they really do have a hard time prioritizing. So it's almost there's this decision between, do we help prevent crime, or do we help solve the cases after the crime has already been committed? And most often they're going to opt for preventing crime. So all of these technology tools, that prevent crime. Now you can make the case that, you take bad guys off the street with digital, you can prove cases, you can take bad guys off the street, that sort of thing. You can help them understand that digital forensics also will help solve cases, help prevent crime in the future by taking those bad guys off the street. But more specifically, to answer your question, trying to explain to them the importance of digital forensics, they're starting to understand that this right here has so much evidence on it. And they are starting to understand the importance of at least mobile phone forensics. And, that's not a difficult explanation anymore, especially when they see cases, you can get, text messages, call logs, location data, photos, like all of these things, they understand that. But then you have to make the extra leap to, we solve these crimes. And some of it's recurring crimes, if it's organized retail theft or narcotics or gang violence, or, they are really trying to get those people off the streets. Well, digital forensics can help.
Right. And they're looking at devices like after a crime happens, but it's also a preventative measure too.
Yeah.
Like you said, if it's organized.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's super important. I am not envious of these leaders who are literally splitting pennies,
Yes.
trying to figure out where to spend their money. It
Absolutely.
seems extremely stressful. So I guess in terms of like training and budgets and priorities and stuff like that, what are some other innovative ways? You had mentioned webinars and some workshops and stuff like that. Are there other innovations like around training that you've seen that people can be creative?
So, I sort of mentioned leveraging free and open source resources. So, free training, there's online and virtual training. Okay, so let's back up just a little bit. Let's acknowledge the fact that training itself many times also has travel expenses related to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that in and of itself is an entirely different, in some agencies, it's an entirely different budget item. So, that in and of itself is a challenge. So online and virtual training, all of us want to go in person. All of us, we all are going to agree that taking training in person is almost always going to result in a better training experience and more knowledge than taking something online or virtually. But online virtual training has advanced so much. And if you have a really great training provider and really great instructors, it can be just as good, and it's more cost effective. So online virtual training, and I think if we're talking about training, like even just peer-to-peer knowledge sharing, the digital forensics community is excellent in knowledge sharing. If you join these communities, these digital forensic communities on the socials, on LinkedIn and Twitter and now Blue Sky, like peer-to-peer knowledge sharing. And I guarantee you, if you are a new examiner or you are having a challenge in a case and you reach out to someone that is more experienced than you, that they will absolutely help you. So peer-to-peer knowledge sharing, collaborations and partnerships is another way. So partnering with neighboring agencies or task forces can help spread the cost of hosting training. Agencies can also work with private sector companies that often provide training as part of software and hardware purchases. Some tool vendors will make you pay for the training, some include it, some will provide a package depending on what tools you're buying or how much. And then there's grant funded training initiatives.
Okay.
Talk about almost all law enforcement related grants that are offered can be articulated to include technology and digital forensics in training. So, for example, if it's a grant that involves gang violence, they're trying to reduce gang violence, you can absolutely include technology and digital forensics tools in that grant. So, it just depends on you like whatever things that the grant is wanting to accomplish. Now, digital forensics plays a role in every crime. So you can always, if you find a grant that is specific to your organized retail theft, and you're having that issue in your area, you can add digital forensics tools and training to that grant. So, think about things in a slightly different way. And even some things like there's conference scholarships. Like if you want, some conference.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Will, if you can't afford to go, sometimes they will waive fees, and you may
You can volunteer too. Yeah.
Yep.
To help. Mm-hmm.
And then
I think IASIS does a lot of volunteer-based, like
all of their
conference
trainers
passes.
are volunteers. They're the humans of IASIS. They call themselves the humans of IASIS, and all of the trainers are volunteers. So, but I do know that they provide some scholarships as well. And then I guess the last thing that I'll mention is like local university partnerships. So sometimes there's a few, and they're popping up more and more, but local universities will sometimes partner with law enforcement to either they have a lab, that they will make some sort of partnership, whether it's providing services or training or tools, or so that's another way that people can cost effectively get training and tools.
Yeah, so I love what you said about definitely reaching out on social media. So I am a Reddit person. I also like Twitter, obviously Blue Sky now, but there is a ton of resources that are just posted day to day on just LinkedIn. And I also love the fact of like how welcoming our community is. So in other industries, it's not as welcoming. But if you have somebody who's truly new going into the industry, or even a seasoned professional, I feel like we have created an environment where it's safe to ask a stupid question, right? Where we all say, oh, there's no stupid questions, but sometimes we feel like it might be a stupid question to ask. I know when I was doing forensic investigations myself, I was always nervous to ask a question to appear in person because I worked with like the best of the best examiners, and I was a little intimidated to ask questions sometimes. But once I got past that, I remember distinctly, actually, I could not get into the cell phone. And at the time I was working with Jessica Hyde, and I felt like I was walking to their team with like a dog with my tail between my legs. Like, I do not want to ask this question. Like, I'm probably supposed to know this or whatever. And they actually didn't have the device. They never looked at that device before. And I just thought because, that's what their specialty was, that they would know any and all things. And Jessica was so wonderfully supportive, and she was like, we're going to order this device and we're going to see what we can do, and we're going to work together on it so that way we all learn from this experience. And I was like, oh, thank God, because
Jessica's one of the most
so nervous.
You couldn't have picked a better person to ask a question to, because she's
absolutely
right there with you through the whole thing.
And yep. It was like a couple week long project, like from the time that we could procure the device and then get into the device and all this other stuff. But it was a learning experience. She tried to convince me at that time, I was very young in my career, to write a blog about it, and I refused. And I regret doing that now because I think afterwards I saw a lot of different questions on Twitter circulating, like how to get into the same device. And I was like, man, I
You
should have
could have,
probably
yeah.
done that.
So I do think, and that's a lot of, I see that advice a lot, to when you have a challenge that you overcome, a digital forensics challenge, the community wants you to write about that and
Yes.
post it on LinkedIn or Reddit or Twitter, like post what you did, because it actually does help others. And what the digital forensics Discord server is another place where you can go, and a lot of people will ask questions and help in that way. There's tons of places that the digital forensics community is hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all addicted to the same mission. So
That's true. That's very true.
yeah. So are there any type of like other, I guess, tidbits of information that you can share, like advice wise, of what you wish you knew going into your career?
You
That's
know,
a tough one.
it is. So what I wish I knew, I do wish that while I was in a leadership position, I genuinely listened to the people that I supervised, because if I didn't, how was I didn't know what they knew. So, but I do wish that maybe I had taken some more basic digital forensics training at the time. But we all get busy, and, I had my own role. I viewed my job at the time really as the person who my responsibilities were to get them what they needed to do their job, whether that was training, whether that was digital forensics tools, whether it was wellness resources, recognition for the amazing work that they were doing. My job was to get them what they needed to do their job. And, I suppose I wish that there were things that I knew, and some of that has to do with digital forensics basics. I never would have had the time to actually, conduct examinations or things like that. I helped manage the grant and, got them their resources that they needed. But I do wish that maybe I had a little bit more knowledge in the digital forensics area. But I'm trying to take care of that now, so that I feel like I still can help the digital forensics community by translating what they need to their executive leadership.
So speaking of that leadership, what advice would you give them, like on the opposite reverse?
So basically exactly what I'm saying. Listen to truly listen to the people that you are supervising, the people that are doing the work. What do they need? Trust them. I always when I was a leader, and then I had leaders above me, I wanted and craved really genuine conversations. Okay, leaders above me, my supervisors, what are you trying to prioritize? What is on your plate? And let me tell you what we need. My job was to tell them what my work unit needed, was to advocate for my work unit and tell them what we needed. And then they had to make those hard decisions we were talking about earlier, okay, there's the crime lab also needs things. And we also need vehicles, like you said, and we need to replace our second chance vests and, our tactical vests. And so, they were making those hard decisions. But the advice that I would give them is to truly listen. I think there are times when digital forensics or anything in technology that somebody doesn't understand, they just sort of tune it out. And, I don't understand any of that. So, well, I'm here to help you understand that. So please listen, and just listen to your examiners, listen to your investigators, listen to your analysts. They are telling you the truth about the resources.
So on the other side of that, though, what can you tell examiners, though? Like, how do you convey that messaging to your leadership team so that they, you're not just a squeaky wheel saying the same thing over and over again?
Understood. Yes. So, and I did feel like that sometimes. I'm writing an article about how to make your case for funding for digital forensics and digital forensics training to your funding authority, whether that's the state legislature, whether that's your city council, whether that's just your police chief or your sheriff, So what did I want to know when my examiners came to me and said, hey, we want to try this new tool, or hey, we need this, or so I would ask them questions like, okay, what does it do? What is it? Some of them are very basic, like, tell me what it does for us. What does it do? Well, it accesses, data on mobile devices, whether they're locked or unlocked. Or, like, what does it do? It helps us find child sexual abuse material faster. It makes us faster on scene. It makes whatever it does. What does it do? How does it help us? But then I also wanted to know, what other options are available? Like, what if we don't get this? What will happen? Like, what are the alternatives? Like, what will happen if we don't? And then what are the alternatives? What are the alternative tools? Who are the competitors? I would also like, who are the competitors to this, and why would we need this one over that one? So I would comparison shop, just, like I would for.
That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would ask for data, like, hey, give me some stats. So most often, the position that I was in, I could make the decision to purchase tools. But there were a few that were very expensive that I had to go up the chain. So I knew that they would say, okay, give me some stats. Like, how many cases are you finding that this tool would help us with? How much time would it save? How much? So stats related to that. And for us, we would pull them internally, but a local agency may pull it internally. They may pull it from agencies around them, similar agencies around them, like stats and data that show why we need this. Like, is this really a problem? Yes, it's really a problem. Here's the data to show that this is a problem, and this is the tool that will help fix that or help us do that. So I guess that's some of what I would talk to decision makers about if I were an examiner saying, hey, we need this tool.
I think that's smart too. I wanted to ask this question because I want people to understand, especially like when I was a team leader and I would ask for justifications if people wanted a new tool. It was almost like, I'm not asking you to do more work. I'm just asking you to help me better understand this, so that way I can make a stronger case on your behalf to get this approved. Like, this is a collaborative effort. Like, we're all here together. I'm not trying to be a headache. Like, I'm not trying to say no. I'm actually trying to get us to a yes.
But I mean,
so I think that it's important to know, like, what information to collect. Maybe some examiners take away from this episode, like, I'm going to go to my leadership team and I'm going to pull stats and I'm going to do some competitive analysis of, like, what are the other comparison tools out there that do either similar things or feature sets, right? Like, here's this feature set, here's this feature set. How do they compare? So that way it's a no-brainer.
Right, exactly. And, realistically, me being in government, all of the law enforcement agencies being in government, we really do have to be careful about how we spend the taxpayers' dollars. Like, we really are trying to be good stewards of the money that we are given to try and keep our community safer. So simply asking legitimate questions to help, like you said, justify, like, are we really making the right decision? Again, I'm not trying, like you said, I'm not trying to give them more work. I'm trying to show whoever looks at it in the future also that this was a good decision.
Yeah, we did all of the fact checking on this to make sure it was actually something that we needed, not wanted. Yeah, absolutely. So what other last minute advice can you give around examiner that's just starting out?
The advice I would give someone just starting in this field would be multifaceted. So I would say find a great training provider and learn the basics, learn how to do what you need to do to validate your findings without fancy tools, but also get hands-on experience. Find a mentor, join in the very robust digital forensics community on LinkedIn and Twitter, Blue Sky, and like you said, Reddit, the digital forensics Discord server. Listen to all the podcasts. Take advantage. There are several podcasts related to digital forensics, and they all have their own personality. They all have their different focus, but listen to that. There's free webinars from a lot of the tool providers will provide free webinars, and you can always take away some tidbits. Take advanced training and tool specific training when it's available to you. But most importantly, though, I think the advice that I would give is to take care of your mental and physical health. Examiners and investigators see horrific things. Going through people's digital devices, they see very personal things. They see horrific content no matter what crime type they're working on. They see horrific things, and they hear and see things that no one should. So I would also give them the advice to prioritize their mental and physical well-being.
Absolutely. I couldn't 100% agree with that even more. Like, I don't know. Anytime that someone's having a hard time, like, go take a walk, like, step away, do what you need to do, go home for the day. Like, we will figure it out. The work will always be there, but you have to take care of yourself first. So 100%. Well, I'm going to shift a little bit.
Okay.
It is a festive podcast. I need to know what your sweater is.
So it's Santa.
On a unicorn.
Riding a unicorn. Yeah.
You just have that? You wear that around?
I just had that. When I was the ICAC commander, we had quarterly meetings of the task force, and we always had one in December. And it was always at the same, hotel in North Georgia. And one night at the end, we would have a banquet and award ceremony. And after that, we would always have a tacky Christmas party. And so when I was searching for something to wear for the podcast, I found that I had way more tacky stuff than I had thought. That I had accumulated some dresses and onesies, fleece onesies, and I was like, oh, this isn't going to be a problem at all.
Is this your favorite?
It is one of my favorite, and I don't have them on now, but I wore them with red sequined pants. So. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. That's a statement.
We were all and it became a competition a lot of times for tacky. Lots of Cousin Eddies, lots of
perfect.
Yeah, full on Christmas suits, and so
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love all the festive, like, ugly sweaters. And they're getting, like, really creative. There's some ones that are just like, I like the couples ones too, because they play off of each other, and you're like, this sweater doesn't make any sense. And then when they're standing next to it, it's like, oh.
Yes.
Love those. So what is your favorite holiday tradition? I'm asking everybody on the podcast this.
Okay. So my kids are 20 and 22. And their entire lives we've been watching Elf, for Christmas, and they are at the point now where they can recite every word, and it's even when they bring boyfriends and girlfriends over and stuff, they are always amazed and slightly scared at the fact that they can literally recite every word. And I'll say one more, which is more I guess sentimental. We throughout our lives, we've had several Christmas trees like fall over. So, and we had some stability issues with our Christmas tree, and lots of favorite ornaments got broken, in those really special ornaments. So I started a broken ornament jar. So it's, it's like a glass jar, but it has all of our broken ornaments in it, and it sits under our Christmas tree now. But it has all of those sentimental, like it would be hard to throw away a baby ornament or things like that. So all of our favorite broken ornaments are in this jar, and it's one of my favorite things at Christmas.
That I need to see a picture of this. You'll have to send it to me.
I
love that. I love that because I'm the person who just throws it away, unfortunately. Or I like super glue things, and I'm not very good.
Then there's the Frankenstein.
It looks
ornament.
like it's super glued.
Yeah.
Like it defeats the purpose. I'm like, I don't know. The antler should be slightly crooked. It's fine.
Yeah. I used to
I love that.
strive for perfection, and that is way too hard. And now
oh my gosh, it's exhausting.
Embrace a little chaos, and they just go. But it takes away the sadness. It's just part of another thing. It just goes in the broken ornament jar. So,
And it adds to the humor. I love that.
yeah.
So I actually just watched Elf yesterday, and I feel like it's one of those movies that I laugh like it's the first time I've ever seen it.
And I don't like rewatching things. I think I like a lot of variety in my life, and I don't really rewatch things, but I laugh every time at Elf.
So what is your favorite Elf scene? I have to know.
Oh,
There's got to be one.
there's so many. So I guess the several that, like, when he finds out that he's a human, that's actually fun. And then when he finds out and they're all like, they're talking about him, well, if he hasn't figured it out by now, then like, and he just sort of, it's an emotional breakdown for him. So
Yeah.
I not that that's funny, but it actually, it's a funny scene. So, oh, and
It
I do
is
like
funny because it's so obvious.
yes. And I do like the one where he's turning the crank on the Jack in the Box, and it's one of my favorites. So.
Passing it.
Yes, and then I didn't know that narwhals were real until like after, like I thought, like the narwhal, Mr. Narwhal comes up out of the water, and I think after I watched that, I found out that was actually a real animal.
Okay, well, I will admit to that now because you admitted to it. I also didn't know that until this movie.
Yeah.
I was like, that's so crazy, and they're like, oh yeah, that's a narwhal. I was like, that has a name? Oh, it's a real thing.
It's a real thing. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think my favorite scene from Elf is when they're decorating the Christmas tree in the living room. I laugh like tears coming out of my face when I'm watching it, when he's just like, I got the star. And he's just
he just jumps on the tree. Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the best scene for me. So, and also the elevator scene when he just hits all the buttons. I'm like, oh man, that guy must have been so angry.
Little. My son did that when he was little.
Yeah, it's not funny when it happens in real life.
Mm-mm.
So, okay, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You are an amazing guest.
It was fun.
And I hope that you have a happy holiday.
Thanks. You too.